You're listening to Food Psych, a podcast about nutrition, eating disorders, and body image. I'm your host, Christy Harrison, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and certified intuitive eating counselor, specializing in health at every size. Join me as I talk with interesting people from all walks of life about their relationships to food.
I remember I was teething, little gums bleeding, cried every evening, it was all about eating. When I became a teen, it was all about beef, and now I'm ready for the world. Try and sink my teeth in, stacking it.
Hey guys, I'm so happy to be coming back to you weekly again. So this is the first episode in a while where it's coming out just a week after the last episode. And if you didn't hear my announcement on that episode, I am now weekly again with the podcast. So be sure to download and check out new episodes every week. Every Tuesday, we're here with a new conversation for you. And today's is a great one. I'm really excited and had this guest on my list to talk with for a while. Her name is Lynn Chen, and some of you may know her from the acting and entertainment world. She's one of those people who's been in everything and you'd recognize her face. But some of you also might recognize her from the eating disorder recovery and body image world. She's a body image activist and a spokesperson for the National Eating Disorders Association. And she also is a food writer. So she has a food blog where she sort of bridges her acting work and her food and body image work. And it's called The Actor's Diet. But it's not about a diet. It's not like some kind of prescriptive BS, it's like her thoughts on food and body from the perspective of a working actor. And then she also has another blog. This is a very productive woman. She has another blog called Thick Dumpling Skin, which she co-runs with Lisa Lee. And that is all about food and body image issues specific to the Asian American community. And it's a place where people can go to connect with others and get support around those particular issues. So I'm going to have links to all of those things in the show notes. And I'm going to bring you our conversation in just a moment. And I think you guys will really love it. And first, I just have a couple of quick announcements. The first is I haven't talked about this in a while on the podcast, but I do have a Food Psych Premium membership available. So if you guys like the podcast, you'll love the Food Psych Premium membership. It's 48 episodes of exclusive content. So it's our whole first season of the podcast, which is now only available as premium content. And then another 18 episodes of a bonus series that I did called Ask Food Psych, where listeners wrote in with their questions about intuitive eating and body positivity, eating disorder recovery, and really anything that's come up in the podcast. And I answered those questions on that exclusive series. So you can get all of those episodes and future bonus episodes that I add going forward. And I do have plans to add a couple full-length bonus episodes there. So go check that out, learn more, and subscribe at christyharrison.com/premium. That's christyharrison.com/premium for the Food Psych Premium membership. And then the other way to support the podcast, well, two other ways, actually, I should say. One is my online course, my Intuitive Eating Fundamentals course, which is still enrolling now. And I have a 5-day mini course as well. If you are not ready to do the full 13-week course for whatever reason, if it's because you're in recovery for an eating disorder or because you're just not ready to commit to that long a course or whatever, I have the mini course option too. So you can see all of those options if you go to christyharrison.com/course. That's christyharrison.com/course. And then finally, the last way to support the podcast is totally free, and that is by leaving us a great rating and review on iTunes. That is so important because it helps bring Food Psych up and keep us up in the ratings and help us reach more of the people who need to hear these messages. And I've been saying or asking for these ratings for a little while now, and every time I go into this long description of how you have to sit down at your computer and type Food Psych into the search bar and all this stuff, but actually I just looked the other week and it looks like they've updated the podcasts app in iOS. I don't know when, but maybe I've been saying unnecessary words for a long time now. But you can actually leave a rating and review from your iPhone now too. So if you're looking at your podcast app on your iPhone, you go to the little tab at the bottom that says search and then type in Food Psych there, click on the result that comes up under podcasts, and then click to the ratings and reviews tab and you can leave your rating and review there. So basically it's the same instructions as from your computer, just now you can also do it on your phone. And maybe some of you smart people have figured that out and I've just been sounding silly for months on end. So if you like the podcast and if it's helped your life in any way, if it's helped you to hear these body positive messages and to hear about intuitive eating and health at every size and body positivity and all the stuff we talk about, then please share the love with others by giving us a good rating and review so that other people can find us. And if you give a 5-star rating, that really helps bring us up in the results. So go to the podcast app, do the thing I said, leave a rating and review, and it'll really help get the word out in addition to just making my day when I read your nice reviews. So now, without any further ado, let's go talk to Lynn Chen. I spoke with her via Skype from her home in Los Angeles, California. So tell me about your relationship with food growing up.
Well, when I was growing up, I was a very, very skinny child. They would tease me a lot when I was growing up. They would call me the Skeletor and whatnot. And so I always felt it was my duty to show everyone how much I could eat. And that was also something that within my household and within, I think, a lot of Chinese households, a lot of the family relationship, a lot of the dynamic revolves around food. It's not really about how your day was or what you're doing at school. It's like, have you eaten? And you should be eating. And isn't this good, what we're eating? So a lot of the food I was eating was Chinese food that my mom mostly cooked. My dad would cook sometimes, and mostly it was my mother and my aunts. So it was mostly Chinese food. And I grew up in New Jersey in a town where there weren't very many Asian Americans at the time. So I was one of just a handful. It was like me and my cousin, basically, and just a couple other kids. So I very much was ashamed of the food I was eating. I wanted to be eating the foods that all of my classmates were eating. You know, I wanted to have Lunchables and I wanted to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I didn't want to be bringing leftover noodles into class. And nobody ever made fun of me. It was just that I was self-conscious, and also it was more like I wanted to have those things in my house too. And my mom wouldn't bring things like cookies and chips into the house. So I felt it was my duty to try and find it wherever I could and sort of sneak it so that she wouldn't get hurt. So like, you know, I went to a babysitter after school, and I remember she made me these grilled cheese sandwiches served with SpaghettiOs, and it was like heaven to me. And I would eat so much of it that when I got home, I would still be full. And because I just ate a full lunch with a side of dinner, and not wanting to hurt my mom's feelings. And also because, you know, she would be upset with me. Like, why would you eat those foods when you knew you were coming home and having dinner? I would begrudgingly eat a second or third dinner with the family. So for a long time, you know, my metabolism was very fast. And it wasn't until I went to college that things really caught up with me weight-wise.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I gained like the freshman, I feel like, because I was also using drugs for the first time, which also alters your appetite. And so when I came home, I remember everyone was really shocked. And the first thing they said to me was like, you got fat. And I, at the time, was not only discovering more about myself, but I was also delving into the world of women's studies, which is actually what one of my majors ended up being. So studying feminism, I was studying body image and eating disorders. And at the time, they didn't really talk about binge eating. They talked about anorexia and they talked about bulimia. And I was neither of those. I was an overeater. So I didn't identify that I myself had an issue with food in terms of overeating. And in fact, I was sort of like, when I went home and they told me that, I was like, you're not going to give me an eating disorder. So I will show you, I'm going to eat all of this to spite you. Like, you think I'm fat? Well, I don't care what you think. Hand over the dumplings, because I'm not anorexic.
Right. Oh my gosh.
But I'm going to keep eating just to show you.
Yeah, I will not let you make me anorexic. Like, that's so interesting.
That's how that whole thing started.
Wow. Yeah, that is so fascinating because it sounds like you really like flew under the radar, both because your metabolism was fast and you were a skinny kid, and also because you sort of just hid the fact out of like duty to your parents, like hid the fact that you were eating this other food that you wanted. So you had sort of like one foot in the sort of American cuisine world and one foot in your home Chinese food world.
Yes, absolutely.
Was it because like did you not get that food at home just because your mom didn't like it and didn't like see value in it, or was it sort of for health reasons too, or what was the reasoning on that?
I think it was kind of both. I think more so that she just didn't understand it. Like to her, like once a food had been introduced to her and it wasn't so foreign, she could accept it. Like, for example, she didn't understand the colored cereals that were fruity and megawatt colors. Like she just didn't get it. However, she like could understand the other cereals that were also full of sugar. I mean, she wasn't looking at sugar content, but they weren't colorful. So like honeycomb and golden grams, those were staples in the house. Like she was fine with that. And the other thing was that, she shopped at the Chinese markets. That's where she got her groceries. So it wasn't like they sold that stuff either. In fact, and this is pretty common in Asian American households. You can ask anyone who grew up with parents from another Asian country. There's usually a tin of Danish butter cookies and almond roca because for some reason Asian food stores sell a lot of these. I think because they're given as gifts. And so that was very common. And so like I remember just binging on almond roca and the Danish butter cookies, the ones that are shaped like pretzels because they had sugar on top. Those were my favorite. And those were basically all she had. The rest were all, Chinese foods. And when my mom would leave town, sometimes she was an opera singer, so she went on tour sometimes. And my dad was left to take care of us. That's when we quote unquote took advantage of him and would be like, let's go to the American supermarket. And we would that's when I would just buy everything. Like it was the Last Supper and eat everything, all the processed American foods that he didn't know how to cook anyway. So I was the one, making like Hamburger Helper and all that other stuff from a box that I thought was delicious. And he just didn't know any better.
Wow. That's so interesting because it sounds like it was partly motivated by just curiosity and like wanting to be a part of this food culture. But then I wonder too, like, was there anything else driving the binging, like the quantities that you would consume? Were you like just super hungry and growing, or did you have emotional stuff that was wrapped up in that too?
Oh, it was definitely emotional. I mean, I ate for any excuse when I was happy or when I was sad, when I didn't know what to do with my feelings, when I was celebrating. I was always eating. And then I was always eating more just sort of to prove to people, not only to my family, but to my classmates. Sometimes I remember like just eating more because I was being teased that, I would compensate by, eating more than I should.
Right, because people are telling you you were too skinny.
Yeah, I think people did throw around the word anorexic. I feel like, how did these third graders know the word anorexic? But something like that, like you're starving yourself, and me clearly feeling like, no, I'm not. So I will show you.
That's really fascinating because it's sort of the opposite of a lot of people's experiences of like getting teased as children. It's rarer, I think, to get teased for being too skinny in this day and age, but it's something that, at least at the time, kids were attuned to also. That's interesting. So how did that shape like your body image and identity, in your body?
I was feeling pretty good about my body all through college, despite, the weight gain and everything. I really felt like pretty good about myself. And I was dating. That's when I met my husband, who I've been with for almost 20 years now. And so, to be with somebody who loves you no matter what size you are and has always been that way really helped me in terms of that. But it was after college and when I started becoming an actor that things started really going downhill for me. It was always in the back of my mind because I was a women's studies major and because I knew I had to feel like positive body image, rah, rah, rah. I felt guilty about not feeling good about my body. And I sort of blamed it on the industry, and that I always thought to myself, if I wasn't an actor, this wouldn't matter. If I didn't have to fit into a certain size jean, this wouldn't be an issue. I would be able to eat whatever I want and it would be fine. And I really believed that. And it almost made things worse for me because inevitably, with every rejection I got, which was a lot, I would punish myself or what I thought was celebrate, like try to soothe myself from that rejection with food because like, well, screw this industry that's doing this to me. Let's spite the negativity by eating, by giving myself what I can, what I think what is off limits to myself. Really nobody ever told me I had to look a certain way until I had to lose weight I actually had to lose weight for a role where I played a ballet dancer in 2005.
Oh my gosh.
It's a role that changed my life, and I really have I have mixed feelings about it because it was a life-changing role, and I have good experiences associated with it, but at the same time, it was when my eating disorder was at its absolute worst. I remember going into it, I had been through like 2 or 3 auditions when the casting director told me, listen, I hate having to do this, but you are really like our first choice for this. And we are seeing everybody under the sun for this. But just so you know, you are like at the top of the list. And we need you to, if this is going to happen, we need you to look more like a ballet dancer. Do you think you can make that happen and do it healthfully? Like they were like, we're telling you now so that you have 4 or 5 months so you can start doing this. And I was like, yeah, no problem. Thank you. And at first, it was done, quote unquote, healthfully. My best friend was a holistic nutritionist, and she put me on a plan, and I started exercising more. But, it was my first time like really dieting. And as the weight started to drop off and people were complimenting me, and in my mind, I knew it's funny when you study it, it's coming, and you're not supposed to be validated by it, but yet it's such a difference when you're actually in it.
Oh yeah. It's so seductive.
Yeah.
I completely identify with that because I also was raised in a pretty like feminist, well, at least my mom was very feminist, and like I studied some women's studies stuff in college and comparative literature on like women and gender issues. But yeah, when I went on my first diet, I was not prepared for the type of validation that happened, even despite my sort of better knowledge of what this was, or not even really conscious, but like, I had learned it at some point. I had read The Beauty Myth, and yet this still seduced me. So yeah, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it was. So the dieting sort of took over, and because I was still a binge eater and I had never really dealt with that, it was a real struggle because here I would be losing all this weight, and then the binging would come back full force, at least, either once a week or once or twice a week. And it became this yo-yoing of trying to balance out the binge with the dieting, with the binge, with the dieting. And so sometimes when I watch that movie, and I watch a scene, I just remember, oh God, I binged right before we shot that scene. And there's me like sucking in my stomach. And it was like so sad to me that those were my memories from that film. Right after the film ended up going to Toronto and Sundance. It got a lot of attention. Sony Pictures Classics released it. And the junkets that we were doing for it were when I really, really was realizing I have a serious problem because I could not stop binge eating from the stress. Part of it I think was suddenly feeling like people were telling me your life is going to change and you're going to become a star. And me feeling like I don't know why I deserve that. I don't think I can handle that pressure. So me punishing myself by overeating to the point where I'm so sick that I can't even make my Q&A after a screening because I don't know, it's just, I honestly think that I did not think that I could handle it. And I didn't know what to do with those emotions. And so that was a really dark time for me. And the years that followed were probably the worst. I was in New York living at the time, and then we moved to LA. And so the first few years living in LA were also pretty horrible in terms of the binging and the anorexia to balance it out. It was not pleasant for anyone involved, my husband especially. And I was in therapy this whole time. Shortly after that first film where I played the ballet dancer, the movie's called Saving Face. That was in 2005. Shortly after that, I started seeing therapists specifically for eating disorders because I knew I had a problem. And I really could not understand why, okay, I'm getting help. Why is this working? Like, doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. And this still is not happening. I'm still talking about food constantly, and it's still like the bane of my existence. And so it wasn't until several years of this, and my manager and my agent dropped me on the same exact day. And I remember just sort of crumbling. And I'd been, quote unquote, doing so good in terms of like not binging and sort of like having my weight be the standard actor weight that I was in my mind as like the perfect actor weight. So I sort of like was like, what the? I don't understand. Why would you drop me? I'm the perfect weight. and that's when I just sort of was like, you know what? I could go back to acting pretty easily and find another agent and manager who would take me back and start this whole roller coaster all over again. But instead, I decided at the time I was trying to get pregnant, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a year off from acting, and I want to see if that thought that I had in my mind that this wouldn't be an issue if I wasn't acting, I want to see if that's true. I want to see if I remove myself from an industry that completely judges people by the way they look, if that's really true. Like, if that is still going to be an issue for me if I remove that. Mm-hmm. And so that year I took off, and I was trying to get pregnant. And that's when I let myself not be on a diet. And I filled my house with foods, again, all the forbidden foods. And I gained about pounds. And it was a really difficult time for me then also, because everyone knew I was trying to get pregnant, and everyone thought I was pregnant because I'd gained all the weight. And so I really had to do a really deep talk into myself in therapy and daily through journaling and in life to really tell myself, listen, what size you are cannot be how you value yourself. And I have to believe that whether I'm sizes up or sizes down, which is what I was fluctuating between sizes. I knew that was not good. And I just was like, let's just see where the cards fall, like let's throw them up in the air and let's see what happens. And if I'm just eating whatever I want in a balanced manner, because I knew how I wanted to be eating, I just couldn't do it. I wanted to be eating, quote unquote, I hate the word healthy and unhealthy when it comes to food. I never really use it, but I did want to be eating more whole foods on a regular basis. And then intuitively, if I wanted to have things that were more processed or more full of sugar, that I would occasionally have them. And
had you learned about intuitive eating at this point, or had anyone introduced the idea? Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I mean, I had also been on so many diets at this point. I had done meal delivery. I had been on the Zone and Atkins and vegan and juice cleanses and everything. So I already knew a lot about the nutritional content of foods and portion sizes and all of that. But I was just sort of like, instead of embracing it or ignoring it, I was just sort of like, let's just have it lying in the subconscious somewhere and just eat according to what the body wants and according to the situation that I'm in. Like if I'm at Thanksgiving and there's like turkey and stuffing and gravy and all this other stuff, and I want to eat 3 servings of it, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to attach guilt to it. Mm-hmm. As time went on, things started balancing out where I wasn't reaching for a 3rd plate or even a 2nd plate because I was satisfied with 1. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't just compensating with the kale shake the next day because I was actually hungry for more. And it just started naturally balancing itself out. And I just naturally started to shed weight like crazy. And of course, everyone was freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And I really just had to have that talking to myself again, the same one I had when I had gained the pounds and everyone thought I was pregnant. It had to be the conversation of like, it really does not matter what they think because they do not have to live in this body. And at the same time, as I was trying to get pregnant, I don't want to have kids anymore. I've gone through a whole infertility struggle that has now brought me to the place where I don't want to have children anymore, and that's fine.
Yeah.
During that period of time when I was sort of like, I don't want to be the type of pregnant woman who is like, all right, let it all go. Now, I didn't want the kid to be the excuse for me like having the kind of quote unquote diet that I always wanted, which was the milkshake diet or whatever. Like I wanted to already embody that and embrace that because I knew that if I was having kids, I wanted to have a healthier relationship with food.
Yeah. You wanted to be there first before you got pregnant so that it wasn't like, woohoo, pregnancy. And then, oh my God, panic, lose the baby weight or whatever.
Totally, totally. I wanted to already like be at peace with food and with myself. And so that's also when I started food blogging. So when I started the Actor's Diet, I'd already come to the point where I've pretty much been the same weight for the last 7 years, I guess. I don't know on a scale, but my clothes still kind of fit. And so, I sort of started it, because I was obsessed with reading other food blogs. And I was looking for something creative to do while I was waiting for the phone to ring for acting jobs. But it was also like, I felt like if I was writing about food and photographing it every day and doing that, then I could just stop obsessing about it and put that obsession towards something else. And also, I honestly wanted to do it so that I could tell people to stop worrying about me because I wanted to just point them to a place. Instead of them being like, you lost so much weight, should we be concerned? Or you didn't finish this plate, should we be concerned? I wanted to give them a place to go so they could see how much I ate, what I ate, when I ate it, and how much I ate the next day. And it was also kind of an experiment for myself too, sort of to see, what am I eating? And does this make sense? And what are the patterns? And what is my relationship to food? And it just sort of took off and became a part of my life that is still a part of my life and is as necessary to me as brushing my teeth.
So do you still catalog everything you eat basically, or is it more food reviews? And
a few years ago, I stopped that. And I admit when I did, I was scared that it would, I don't know if it was that I would gain weight or that I would become obsessive again, but it didn't. I find that just the creativity and the mind that you have to have when you're creating a blog post is enough so that I'm not freaking out over counting calories or any other things that used to occupy brain space in my mind.
Right. You're actually channeling your brain space now towards something bigger and more productive.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's so amazing what that kind of thinking, the obsessing about calories and food, like what that does in terms of taking away brain space, but also kind of quelling anxiety about other things, because so many things in life are hard to control, especially as an actor. My boyfriend's an actor, so I kind of see it firsthand or secondhand, but up close, what the rejection is like and the sort of waiting for a role or waiting for the phone to ring or, dealing with auditions that never go anywhere and then suddenly getting cast in something and being like insanely busy. And, it's kind of a crazy life. So I think, giving yourself that stability, I wonder if the anorexia kind of served to also anchor you in some way or give you like a way to manage your anxiety about it.
Absolutely. It was like a structured, dependable way of eating that I could depend on and feel some sort of control over in this very uncontrollable, unpredictable business.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so how has your relationship with that changed as you've started to, and I don't know where you sort of feel like you fall in like recovered, like what you would sort of consider your place to be right now, but as you've progressed in that,
For the most part, I consider myself recovered, although I still see signs of ordered eating, I call it, not disordered eating, but very ordered eating. I still eat like a melon for breakfast every day and a miso soup last thing in the day. Like these are things that I just find a lot of comfort in. Like I don't need it if I'm traveling, let go of it. But like the second I'm home, it's almost like, oh my God, I can't wait to get a cantaloupe. You know, it's like, it's a very, like it's my friend, it feels, and I feel that attachment. I recently gave up diet soda, which was a crutch for so many years, even in my recovery, because I used to smoke a lot. I used to smoke cigarettes. And so I had learned that with this very addictive personality of mine that I couldn't just quit something cold turkey. I needed something to replace it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I replaced one vice with a lesser evil vice, in my opinion, which was Diet Coke. Like if I arm myself with this Diet Coke, which I can get anywhere, at a bar, at a party, anywhere, instead of like wanting to smoke cigarettes to quell my anxiety, I can just sip on this Diet Coke. And that became an issue also. And I very much knew that it was a problem. And very recently, with the help of kombucha and LaCroix, I have replaced that with another addiction. But, you know, I'm taking baby steps here. But there are some times when I do feel like I am definitely still controlled in that way. But it doesn't worry me because I know that it all balances itself out.
Well, you have, and so you're a full-time food blogger and food show host and stuff, right?
Sort of, yeah. I sort of have, it's funny, I make my money acting, but I spend most of my time doing the food blogging and food hosting thing.
Cool. Yeah. So I know that life too, because I'm a food journalist. That's like my first career and have a lot of friends who still do that. And like, you know, the lifestyle of that, of going to tastings and going to meals to write about them is so demanding. Like to be on the clock with food and have to sometimes cram in like a second dinner or, you know, like more meals and snacks than you would ever be hungry for. Probably that it sort of requires them to like structure the rest of their eating accordingly.
Yes, it's definitely changed. My relationship with food has changed again because of the fact that I not only eat out constantly, and usually the chefs do not want just to order a salad with chicken on it. They're like, no, you need the poutine with the short ribs on top, please.
And here are these 5 other things for free that we're making.
Why not? We just gave you some French toast, but I think you should eat dessert as well.
Right, exactly.
And that's just a part of it, and I expect it. So in expecting that, I do have to plan my life around that and tell the people that I'm going to be with, because everyone thinks just because I'm a food blogger now that I love eating, which I do. But at the same time, they're always like, let's go to the hot place, new place for brunch. And I'm sort of like, oh, I need the day off. Can we go to a farmer's market? Can we take a hike? Can we do something else? Because it's become a job.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, you know, it's funny, in balancing out the life as a food blogger and also the life as an actor, I sometimes now when I book a job acting wise, it's like a relief for me because then I get to it's almost like I have this excuse to put food blogger brain on hold for a few weeks and just act. And sometimes that kind of eating is more, I mean, my relationship to food has changed in that, like, I do still enjoy food, but it's definitely less sexy, less exciting to me. So to me, like, getting to have somebody prepare me like just fresh foods and I don't have to think about anything, just feels really nice.
Right. So it's not as like huge of a culinary experience. It's just a simple meal at home or something.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I totally identify with that. I feel like I got so jaded. I used to work at Gourmet magazine. I was an editor there. And we had like a research budget and we were expected to go out and try new places. And we also could take out writers. And, you know, as an editor, I would meet with writers to talk about stories, but it would always be like, oh, let's go try this new place. Let's go check out that new place so that I could sort of be amassing knowledge and, you know, they could be exposed to these new things too. And it was just like everything was a culinary experience. And so then almost nothing was a culinary experience, you know, like there wasn't nothing really, I mean, things still stood out, of course, but it was like there just wasn't enough flip side sometimes, you know, to just like turn off and be like, okay, now I'm just going to eat some toast with peanut butter or whatever, you know, simple food.
Oh, toast with peanut butter sounds so good.
Yeah. I know. It's like, yeah, just something without a lot of flavor. Just give me. And actually, it's funny because now I think I also went through my recovery while I was writing about food. So writing about food helped a lot for sure. And then also therapy and intuitive, learning about and starting to practice intuitive eating. But like really now I feel like I'm not that excited about food in the way that I used to be when I was so hungry all the time. Like I just, I eat when I'm hungry and it's great. And I like trying new places and stuff. But like the desire to invest so much of my time and money into the pursuit of deliciousness is just not there. Like if some, friend wants to try like some hot new place and it's really expensive, I'm like, how about we just go to like a taco joint or something,
That's
like
me too. I'm right there with you.
Don't want to do it, It's interesting because, I think it's good exposure therapy in that way where all these sort of, amazing things get like kind of lose their luster, but it's a little sad too,
Yeah, but I guess all things are like that. If you're dealing with them constantly like that, everything loses its shine and mystery.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also interesting because when I was writing about food, so before I worked at Gourmet where I was a web editor and I didn't really cover a lot of restaurants or anything like that. But when I was freelancing about food, I definitely did sometimes go out to cover things and like go to big tastings and events and stuff like that. I was sort of still in the phase of recovery where I was still binging and restricting, and I was on that cycle. And those big tastings were like a licensed binge, it was like a sanctioned way to binge and be sort of applauded for it. And I'm curious how your relationship with that is because, since you had that aspect of your eating disorder too, like what did it do for you to be kind of asked to binge at these events, basically?
I think for the first few years, I began to, exactly what you said. Like it was sort of like a licensed binge. I remember I called it permission to binge almost, but it was almost like not only at those events, but in general, of just changing my relationship to feeling guilt over food, which is why I don't label foods as healthy or junk in general. I just never wanted to feel afterwards like the fullness was not as bad as the overwhelming shame and guilt and the hiding of it from my husband. Those were the most painful parts. And so I just wanted to remove those things. And I'd say for the first few years of going to these taste events, it's not that I was binging. It was more that like I was trying some of everything. And then at the end of the night, I would inevitably be like, I feel like I might die.
Yeah.
I don't like this feeling, but I'm not going to punish myself for feeling this way.
Which is huge. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so for the first few years, it was like that. And I'd actually say in the last 2 years, it's been the first time where I go to food events. And instead of having to eat every single thing, I sort of like scope the place out. I actually ask people, what's good? What is the must try? And then I'll try those things. And it doesn't bother me that I have no more fear of missing out, It's like totally fine that I haven't eaten every dish on this floor and I will live and it's okay. So I think that has really changed for me lately. But it's interesting, like it did not used to be this way for sure. And so because my relationship with food is constantly shifting, I wonder what it will be like in the future. Like I'm sure it'll change more as I begin to work with food even more. Like I just shot a month ago, my first cooking channel show where I was a contributor, and we had to eat so much sugar that not even consciously, I really haven't eaten that much sugar. I used to be kind of a sugar fiend. Like that was like the joke that like Lynn eats sugar every day and that's how my skin looks so youthful and glowy is that I eat dessert, once or twice a day. And after shooting this show, it was so much. It was like so much that I did not touch sugar for a while. Like we would walk past an ice cream shop and my husband would get a scoop and he'd be like, do you want to taste? And I'd be like, like I'd feel it in my like skin, like the revulsion to it. And so I wonder if that's going to start happening more and more as I have to eat on camera. If I have to eat 50 takes of lobster that's going to change my relationship to lobster. It has to. It has to.
At least for a while, and maybe who knows how long, but.
I mean, I shot a Subway commercial years ago where we had to do the spit bucket. I haven't eaten Subway since.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, your body remembers it.
Because you took so many bites.
Yeah.
Wow.
That bread, that smell of it, it just brings back all these memories that aren't exactly pleasant. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes as the years go on.
Definitely. Yeah. And the whole other level of being on camera and having your kind of the acting career collide with the food writing career in a very public way.
Yeah. And I always be very honest about it, because that's probably the question I get asked the most is, how do you eat that much and stay so skinny? That's what everyone wants to know. I admit, like, the first, I bristle at first, and I get angry at first, because, like, that's not what this is about, people. Don't you know me? But no, they don't know me. So I have to explain to them. And then I realize, you know what? If I can be the example of somebody who is trying to show that you can enjoy food, but that there's a balance to it, and that there's a balance to body image too, that it's not something that just inherently comes to you and you just make a decision one day that I'm going to feel good about myself and it's just going to happen. Like, that it's work. All of this is work, and that we're not alone in it, in this struggle. And I understand where that wanting to know comes from, because that was definitely me pouring through magazines, reading about Scarlett Johansson eating a cheeseburger and being like, really? She ate a cheeseburger? How much did she eat of it? Did she have fries with it? Or how much of the ketchup did she have? Like,
oh, yes.
It was, and I'm not reading the rest of the article because I'm like, she ordered a cheeseburger. Well, then,
the anorexia brain just starts crunching all the numbers. Yeah.
And, it's funny, like, and nowadays, I'm sure that's exactly what people are doing to me too. When they watch me take a bite of a cheeseburger on camera, they're also wondering, is she eating the rest of that? And I will tell them sometimes no, and sometimes yes. And that decision is completely up to me and how I'm feeling in that moment. If I have 4 other cheeseburgers to be eating that day, hell no, I'm not eating more than a bite.
No.
I'm not going to allow myself to, just because I don't want to feel sick at the end of the day. But
yeah, so it's a self-care.
I want to enjoy it too. I want to dig into the next cheeseburger and actually not have to act like I like it, but actually enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important to me.
And you got to preserve your ability to taste, right? Because, I mean, that's the other thing. As you get full, your taste sensitivity goes down. So if you're eating things that you have to really experience the taste of, it is a consideration.
Absolutely. I remember, did you hear about the whole Giada De Laurentiis thing where she has a spit bucket and people were giving her crap?
Oh, yeah.
I remember hearing about that and having really mixed feelings about it. I mean, on the one hand, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely have been in situations where I'm like, do we really have to keep doing this? Can I please not have to take another bite of this? At the same time, I just think the transparency part has to be part of it, because people do expect Giada to look a certain way now at this point. Sort of like damned if she does and she's damned if she doesn't. Like, if she shows up gaining pounds, people will comment on that. And I just feel like, I don't know. I wish that she was more, I think she didn't even comment about it. Like, I don't think she even acknowledged it, whether it's true or not. But I feel like, in the position I'm in, I want to be transparent about what I'm eating and what I'm eating when I'm not eating on camera, because that to me is I understand that food is entertainment now and that it's part of what people want to see. But at the same time, we have these very real issues that both you and I have undergone, and we have to let people know that it is a fantasy. The same way, any actor would tell, I mean, some actors don't tell the truth about what their personal life is, but then a lot of actors, that it's become more and more okay for actors to show what their actual lives are.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that they're not these perfect people that have it all together all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that's valuable and, makes a lot of sense given that firsthand exactly what that's like. And I know firsthand exactly what that's like too, to pore over these images and think like, what is this person doing and how can I achieve it? When in reality, it's nothing to achieve. It's nothing to, when you really are honoring your body and you're out of the diet mentality, your body just is what it is. It's wherever your genetic set point is. That's where you end up. And, if you keep feeding yourself consistently and, honoring your hunger and fullness, that's pretty much where it stays, and it's this effort of manipulating things that gets people so far down this rabbit hole of disordered eating that, it's not real.
Yeah.
What they're trying to achieve is not real, nor is it, at the end of the day, it's not valuable. It's not what, losing weight and having the quote perfect body does not bring what people think it brings. Like,
no, it doesn't. And that's the other thing is like, I've now, because I work so often talking with other actors about what they're eating, I've just seen this pattern that like weight really doesn't matter when it comes to whether or not you're working or not. Like it's a myth. I think that the people who tell you to lose weight are your agents who are like, I need to do something. You should get new headshots and lose a couple pounds.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like they just feel like they need to say something and they're obviously not, they don't know what it's like to actually go through it. I don't really think it impacts. That's what I've noticed from myself and from other actors that I've worked with and talked to, that it really does not matter. It's because of the self-confidence that you have coming into a room, owning your body, owning your space, owning how your body walks into that space. That's what gets you the job and who sometimes. So, like it's just so many things are out of your control. And I like being able to tell people that I feel like I've experimented with it long enough that I can tell people it doesn't have anything to do with what your body looks like. So please let go of that.
Oh my God. And what a valuable message for actors to hear, because, you were stuck in that myth and that's one thing that perpetuated your eating disorder. And I know does so for so many actors and performers in general.
Yeah.
So to say like, no, really, it doesn't matter. And you can be successful, whatever your body size, if you're just embracing it and owning it and have, learned to feel good about it.
Absolutely. I worked a lot more when I was much heavier. And I know that me being a certain size is not the reason why I book something.
And it's interesting that can, of course, it's sort of when your mind is fixated on that stuff and you think that that's the key to happiness, it's so easy to misattribute anything that goes wrong to being too heavy or anything that goes right to being like the right size. And the reality is just so much more complicated than that. And it really has nothing to do with it at the end of the day.
I will say, though, that I went on my first bathing suit audition not too long ago, and that's a different place. With that, yeah. I feel like if you remove yourself from those kinds of situations, it'll probably be healthier for you, for your mindset, because that is a whole other world. The whole modeling world is not something I'm part of. So to go in and be in that suddenly was sort of like, whoa, yeah.
Yeah, that seems overwhelming.
I'm not going to do this to myself again.
Yeah, because that's a place where that sort of unrealistic expectation still does really exist. Again, I think, from a feminist perspective, it's certainly true that women have more pressure than men to look a certain way, probably even in sort of more traditional acting roles. But there still are roles available for people of all sizes in a way that like modeling, there's really not as much.
No.
At this point. The plus size modeling industry is just a sliver of the modeling industry in general.
Exactly.
How did that affect your body image to go through that bathing suit audition? Like, do you feel like you marshaled your coping skills that you've learned along the way and sort of used that to get through it? Or
I got through it okay. It was funny because I was the only person there who wasn't in a two-piece. And my girlfriend who is a model who does this all the time, she's like, oh, Lynn, you have to wear a two-piece. What are you thinking?
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, I don't own a two-piece. I don't want to wear a two-piece. I don't want to get a two-piece just for this. This is
Yeah.
Really, I definitely felt like I was fine in the situation, but when I left, I was like, I feel like I was just on another planet. And here I am. I'm going to be 40 this year. Like, I don't need to do this. Like, like I've lived this long without having to do bathing suit modeling. Why should I continue? I mean, it was for a vacation line, so it was not like it was required because it was part of it. It wasn't like I was modeling swimsuits. Like, it's not like I want to be a model.
It's like a part of the audition. Yeah.
Sort of like, and this is what's great about my girlfriend who I talk to, who has terrific body image. Sort of like, show them what you have, and if they don't accept it, then screw them, whatever. So I showed them what I had, which was my body in a one piece.
I love it. And just like, who cares? Like,
And
yeah.
if you want to hire me based on this, great. We'll all get along fine.
Right. That's true. Yeah, your aesthetic is that, and that's what you want to bring to the table. And if they like it, awesome.
I mean, that's what I feel about most things in life. Is like, this is who I am. This is me being me, uniquely me. And great if you like it, and if you don't, I understand, because not everyone's going to like me.
Right. That's a really amazing place to come to. Like, I think I've come to that over time too. I'm 35 now, and I feel like I've finally like gotten the hang of that. But I mean, it took a good 30 plus years to, overcome that people pleasing tendency. And it used to horrify me when people would say things like, you're not going to be for everyone. Not everyone's going to like you. I was like, oh, not everyone's going to like me? That sounds awful. Like, how could I live in a world where not everybody I meet likes me? I was like, no, that's fucking crazy. Like, of course not everyone's going to like you. Well, tell us about thick dumpling skin, because I wanted to make sure to get to that. And that's such an interesting part of your work.
Thick dumpling skin came about because I was blogging on the Actor's Diet so often about eating disorder things. And as I was going deeper and deeper into my recovery, I found that I didn't really want to talk about it anymore. But I was hearing from so many readers who were specifically Asian American, who were telling me they understood where I was coming from when I was talking about going home to visit my parents and them putting pressure on me to eat, or talking about the way I looked, that I started to think to myself, oh, this is not... I wanted a place to put the eating disorders in a separate place, so that it wasn't so weird. I was like, yay, cupcakes. The next day, let's talk about body image,
Right.
It just felt really weird to constantly have the two next to each other. So I wanted a place for that. And then I was listening to NPR, and I heard Lisa Lee on, and she was talking about how she had gone to Taiwan and basically gone to this fat camp, and that it was completely acceptable. And it was about, the culture in Taiwan and the way that it was affecting her body image and how she felt like a quote unquote fat Asian. And I needed to connect with this woman. So I looked her up on Facebook. At the time, she worked at Facebook. So she answered me back right away. And she actually was a fan of mine from watching me in movies. So she knew exactly who I was. And we had this meeting and basically started the blog shortly after, because we just wanted to form a community of some sort. And initially when we started, it was mostly just submissions, reader submissions, people sharing their stories. And it still is. People do still share their stories. But, Lisa and I both have extremely busy lives now. And we just sort of have now taken it to the place where we're just podcasting, because it's just a lot easier to talk about these issues when we can just have them conversationally. And then we do a lot of speaking as well, where we go to different colleges and whatnot to talk about Asian Americans and eating disorders.
I love it. That's such a great resource. And I definitely want to point any listeners here to that. So tell us where people can find it.
It's at thickdumplingskin.com, and we're at dumplingskin on all social media. And yeah, we have our podcast, which is the Thick Dumpling Skin podcast, where we basically pick a topic and go with it. Last week was periods.
I love it. Yeah, it's cool. It's very far ranging.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Lynn, and tell us where people can find you at your main website and your social media and all that.
Great. My site is lynnchen.com, which will point you to the Actor's Diet, all the different social media I have. I have too much social media going on. In fact, right now I'm like, I should consolidate somewhere, but I can't seem to do it because I do too many different things.
I've totally been there. It's like, yeah, do you have a separate brand for everything you do, or do you put it all under one? And like, yeah, it's a lot to manage.
And then they change the algorithm for one thing. So then I'm like, I don't know.
I know, seriously. Like, I don't think anybody sees Facebook page posts anymore. Like, should I just give up? I don't know.
It's just crazy.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's really great talking with you. And I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Christy.
So that's our show. Thanks again so much to our guest for being here and to you guys for listening. We'll be back again with another brand new episode. So be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Android or whatever your favorite podcast app is if you haven't done so already. Meanwhile, I'd love to stay in touch with you online. The best way is by email. So if you join my email VIP list, you'll get exclusive tips about intuitive eating and body positivity and updates about all my work as well as new episodes of the podcast. So if you go to christyharrison.com/email, you can sign up there. That's christyharrison.com/email. And I would love to have you guys all on my VIP list. And then you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're at Food Psych on Facebook and Food Psych Pod on Twitter. I am also on Instagram, just me this time. I don't have a separate account for the podcast, but I'm on Instagram at Christy Harrison, and the first I is a 1. The music you're hearing behind me now is by a band called AWOL, and the track is called Food, used under the Creative Commons license. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay psyched.
Stupid or scared, no work in the kitchen now. Who put you there in that perfect position now? Bullies want your food, and you ain't really beat. Have you ever